Hey there, folks. So tonight I am here just kind of being a disobedient woman, because that's what they claim I am. So we got to own that sometimes. And I'm being joined by a friend of mine, Jay. Say hi, Jay.
Hello.
So who is Jay? Tell me about yourself.
Well, that's a great question. I feel like first of all, we are honoring our foremothers here with our stick and bitch, uh, in the tradition of Amish and Mennonite women. Doing our crafts and just sharing some thoughts. Uh, the actually,
Yes.
so I was raised Mennonite, liberal Mennonite. And on my left, you can see a little bit of a quilt block that my grandmother would have done at that point in the nursing home, in a Mennonite nursing home, where they all like sat around a big quilt at the nursing home and would like stitch
Uh-huh.
these quilts, and they raised tons of money and probably still does for the nursing home because those quilts go for so much. You know how people like to pay for an Amish or Mennonite made quilt.
Oh yeah, you can easily get a couple thousand for a quilt.
Yeah. So, well, first to finish answering who I am, Jay Yoder, raised liberal Mennonite in Archibald, Ohio, little town in Northwest Ohio. Um, Queer, very queer. I use they, them pronouns and generally call myself a genderqueer woman. Because I don't think I can divorce woman fully from my identity as the way I look and the way the world works. And I work in nonprofits, in peacemaking, in social justice. I've worked in mental health. I've worked around the world and just on a variety of justice causes. And then on my other side, oh, I'm going the wrong way, is this lovely locally painted painting of like a leather butch lesbian woman. So just, trying to represent all of it,
Thank you. Thank you
which
so
represent it
much.
all. Mm-hmm. That's
So,
who I am. And I have thought, I just have to add, I've always been like, I should like learn to quilt and just sell quilts under the name like
did
Jennifer
you see
Yoder.
Did you see the Lone Star quilt I made last year?
No. Did you sell it for $5,000?
No, actually, it's sitting on my bed. Let me see
Oh,
if I can
I
find
love
you a
that.
picture. I'll
I
show
did.
you my
Was it
quilt.
fun? Have you like, do you enjoy quilting now?
Let me tell you a story here.
Okay.
Okay, gather round. It's story time. So, one of the things that I do that embraces my heritage is that I create clothing, like like original, like created by me clothing.
Yes.
Okay. So that's one of the things that I do.
I love
Um,
that.
One of the other things that I do sometimes is I remake things in a different way, in a slightly different way that maybe doesn't exactly um, look the way that everybody thinks it should look,
Mhm.
if that makes sense. But
It
here,
does.
I'm just going to go ahead and let's see. I found the picture of the quilt, one picture. So I'm gonna show you that in a minute. But anyways, I do not hand quilt quilts, okay?
All right.
I know how to do it. I mean, I guess
Well, then you're
technically,
doing it the wrong way. Just kidding.
well, what can I say? I'm disobedient after all. They've been saying that for like, so many years I can't even count. That's been my whole freaking life. So, what am I supposed to say? I mean, should I just go
Well,
ahead
one of
and
my grandmothers like quilted her whole life and is very good at it. And my other grandmother, um, and they both passed away within the last year and a half. So one of them quilted her whole life, and the other one like learned how to quilt when she was older through like a block of the month. Like they'd send her a thing once a month, and she learned to quilt that way. So I suppose I
uh,
can still learn.
oh wow. Wow. Just
Tea
just
delivery in case we need to spill any tea.
Well, we might need to spill some tea because,
Right.
have
Do you
you
want to say hi to
heard?
the people? Hank's my off camera. There we go.
Hi.
That's Hank. That's who I'm making this blanket for Hank. He's my sweet baker boy.
That's
Um,
fantastic.
he, him, they, them pronouns. We'll go to bed.
Uh-oh. So, anyways, he's going to bed already.
Yeah, because baker boy. 4 a.m. tomorrow.
So he's working like a farm child.
Yes. However, he does get to like get off work in the afternoon and go to bed as opposed to, work a 20-hour day.
I mean, but if you're working for like nonprofits and advocacy agencies, isn't it a common conception that like we get paid like tons of money and we're rich and we like
I
we
would
have
love
like
those buckets of money. If you find that if someone was hiding them from us this whole time, I'm gonna be so mad.
I mean, me too, Jay. Me too.
It
Here.
is funny when people like, look, I think people should make lots of money. I do a lot of the fundraising for Into Account. I'm trying real hard to raise us enough money that we do make buckets of money, but that is not generally the case, and it is not at the moment.
Yeah, it's kind of tough. See, like here's the thing. So,
That's beautiful.
that's my quilt, okay?
Yeah.
So, I love that quilt. And going back to the whole I don't quilt right. So,
Yeah.
have you ever seen the knotted quilts?
Yeah, that was my one of my grandmas made one for my like 16th birthday.
See, I do the knotted quilts.
Okay.
That is as far as I will go with the quilting. I
Yeah.
am not freaking sitting there in hand stitching 8 to 11 stitches per inch. No,
Yeah.
you can kind of like go over there with that because I'm not doing that.
Well, that's why you can't sell your quilts for $5,000.
Darn it though, I could really use $5,000.
Also, like I love the idea of a quilting, so like just a bunch of radical queers sitting around a quilt frame, just like shooting the shit,
Okay,
making some
so
revolutionary plans.
so here's the question. Was there a lot of gossip passed around at the quilting circle?
Yes, but I feel like it's that like indirect, like, well, she just
All right.
hasn't been herself lately. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Well, you know what? There's a ex-Mennonite man. There's just something going on with him.
mm-hmm,
Mhm.
mm-hmm.
He's just been acting kind of wild.
I
Have you
just
heard about it?
I just wouldn't let my kids play over there, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And we should all pray for him.
We should, yes,
Don't
absolutely.
forget to help me.
Put them on my prayer list.
Yes. I'm
Let's not.
sorry.
Our gossip is much more fun, I feel like, because it's just the
Much more
direct
fun.
realities we're living with and then strategic planning around it.
Yes, yes. Our gossip is so much more fun, I think. I'm just not cool with the whole like, okay, so the
Yes,
vagueness,
yes,
the veiled, the veiled way.
yes.
It's like
And the like
so,
significant looks.
oh God.
There's actually, so one of the things I do for my mental health is read uh there's this meditations book, Meditations on Codependency, and it's Melody Beatty, and she just writes little things about like, especially it honestly it's especially for if people were raised in Christian contexts habits and we have like shame and control at sort of the center of some of our ways of living. Um, and one of the ones from a couple days ago that's my favorite every year when I come to it is direct people are safe people because you can trust
Oh,
them to tell the truth. And it's like
yeah.
indirect people's truths will come out. They'll just come out sideways and confusing and hurtfully and and every time I'm like, oh God, yes, direct people are safe. Like it just feels so calming
Uh-huh.
because yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, you want to say hi, Slew? Hi, Slew. So glad you're here.
Hello.
And we're also joined by Jacob. Hi, Jacob.
Hey, Jacob.
And an Angela. Hi, Angela. Woo, won't be here long. Well, I don't know. We're just going to have a little bit of a stitching session,
Yeah,
you know.
you could probably come back and watch it later, right?
Oh, yes. You can come back and watch it later, or you'll be able to download the audio whenever I get it uploaded. And Donna from New Jersey. Hi, Donna. Welcome. If you're unfamiliar with us, you're about to learn a whole lot. Um, so here's something that drives me kind of a little bit crazy sometimes is like I crochet. Okay.
Mhm.
Why do people think I'm knitting?
I think genuinely a lot of people don't know the difference.
But
I had the same because someone wrote in an article about you something about the way you moved your knitting needles, and I was like, "There's only one needle. It's crocheting." Okay,
okay, y'all. So pro tip, okay? Knitting uses two needles.
that's right.
Okay? Okay? Crocheting uses one needle, only one.
Hmm.
Just a FYI, if you're ever wondering what the difference is, there you go.
Yes, and there's on the crochet. I'll be so nerdy right now. There's the hook,
Uh-huh.
and the knitting needles are just like sharp at the end.
Uh-huh.
I mean, there can be you can have the circle. It doesn't matter. The point is, there's a difference.
There is a difference. Ha!
I'm working on a blanket. It's my second blanket.
I don't know what I'm making yet.
Okay, well, you'll figure it out eventually.
Angela says, yes, people calling crochet knitting drives me bonkers. I crochet.
Mm. Okay,
Yes!
yeah.
Yes.
I'll just have my the quilting is gone, and you can just have a full great view
Uh-huh.
of the blanket.
Oh my. Are we using the same pattern? That's a negative? Negative, Ghost Rider, negative.
No, I'm doing a bigger yarn blanket stitch that I learned that's just like three, you just skip three,
Hmm.
which is makes it nice so it's not like, super tight and thick for a blanket. Like it has some breathing, but it's still really warm because it's that big thick yarn. Not okay, this is so stupid, but not the really big thick yarn, which I feel like is cheating when you have to get a giant crochet hook and the yarn is like so big. I'm like, just buy a blanket.
If you could use your arm to like crochet it, you're
Yes.
cheating. You're
Which is
cheating.
rude because people need to learn,
Why
so I
are
should
we
do
being so
myself. I
judgmental?
don't know.
We're being
It's how we were.
judgmental.
It's because we're stitching and bitching, and we're just
Oh my
picking up
god,
the
let me
value.
tell you what, if there's one more account of like an ex-plain man in the inboxes of ex-plain women with inappropriate messages, have you encountered that?
Um, it's not usually uh ex-plain men for me, but yes, um I've encountered some weird predatory stuff in my inbox.
Well, I mean, y'all, nobody wants to see. I think the worst ones is always for me is like when they send inappropriate pictures and
Yes.
like for me, I just block those people like
Yes.
immediately. But some
Yes.
people like when they first get out, like they may not know that they're allowed to or they may not feel like they're able to. So like I'm here to tell you, y'all, if you get that in your inbox, block them. block them.
Yes.
You don't
Yes.
even
Yes.
have to say hi to them. You don't
Yes.
have to say yes, no. You don't have to say anything to them.
That's
Just
right.
block them. If they send you an inappropriate message, block them.
Yes. And
That's my story.
my general policy, so if it's inappropriate sexual stuff, just no and I'm done. If someone like lashes out at me a little bit, especially if they're like also survivors or they're in the same kind of work, they're advocates, they're struggling. I usually give people like one lash out at me. And not if it's like horrible, like I kind of draw my boundaries on if they're cursing me out, calling me horrible names, no. But if it's like, hey, you shouldn't be doing this, then I give someone like a okay, I hear, we all lash out, we're all sensitive about stuff, we all come from like really hard background experiences, sure. And then if they don't, if after I'm like kind and supportive to them, if they don't respond, start responding in more kind and supportive, even playing field ways back, then I'm like, okay, well, I tried to be nice to you and, like we're just going to disagree. Thank you.
It's important to have boundaries. It really is.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's something that many people did not learn is having boundaries. But, I'm just sitting here stitching and bitching about shit. So what do I know?
Right. Well, and a lot of people think boundaries are controlling other people's behaviors, right? So like you don't do this and you don't get to do this. And in reality, the boundary is like, what will I tolerate and what will I do if someone does the thing I don't want? So it's like, if someone gets in my inbox, it's not, you have to stop that. It's like, I won't tolerate this. So I either tell you no or block you or what, like the boundary is what I get to do.
Your pup's got words to say
He's
about
like,
that.
I have boundaries.
He said, hey, respect my boundaries.
He said, my boundary is if you keep trying to not pay attention to me, I'm going to demand attention. Okay, he got himself a chew toy. I've tried to teach him when he feels stressed out to get a toy and chew on it. So he's gotten pretty good at it. He just grabbed a toy, picked it up, and brought it up.
Oh, that's
Good for you, bud.
amazing.
Yes. Because dogs have big feelings too. And just like us, they need to learn how to manage their big feelings. Otherwise, they come out sideways at people.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to get into Dr. Harder at all? Because that's one of my biggest things with her and the report that we just wrote. And just a quick background. Dr. Harder has positioned herself as an expert in Amish and Plain cultures. She does not come from those backgrounds, and the information that she gets about those backgrounds is from Amish leaders and Plain leaders, and not from survivors or people who experience the most harm in those contexts.
And
So that's my thing about her, is that she is indirect, and her stuff comes out sideways at people. Like that's who I thought about this time when I read direct people are safe people. Was Dr. Harder is not a safe person. She didn't answer any of your questions directly. She didn't take any direct responsibility. She talks sideways and her truth comes out sideways.
this is true. Going back to boundaries, one of
Yes.
our listeners says boundaries are tough to learn after coming out of religion. Coming from an environment that only recognizes people as property is so toxic. That is absolutely correct. Going
Yes.
back to, thank you for sharing that, by the way. Going back to Dr. Harder, well, okay. I feel as if Dr. Harder has legitimized the very agencies, the very leaders, the very voices that
Yeah.
sat there and crucified me. They drug my name through the mud. They harassed me. They did all of these things. And, you know, along comes Dr. Harder, like 15 years later or
Yes.
however many years later, because it was, I believe, like my case happened in like 2004. She published that book in like 2019, right? And then she listens to only the people in the culture that are in positions of power.
Yeah.
So it's a very imbalanced view. There is a lack of balance. There's a lack of even authenticity in what she is putting out. And she's tailoring, in my opinion, she's tailoring her message to whatever audience she has, rather than giving legitimacy and agency and personhood and treating people like human beings.
Yes.
When she was confronted, she isolated one person as being the only person that has a problem, even though the open letter was signed by 19 other people.
Yes.
She isolates one person. And what's even more atrocious to me is that some of the signers of that open letter are currently Amish people. They're
Yeah.
currently plain people. And they very bravely,
Yeah.
because they have read some of the teachings, because they have read some of the things that she's recommending, they very bravely signed this letter before it was sent to her. And so, where is she even acknowledging them? Where is she giving them any form of personhood? After she approached them on social media, which she also, I feel like, lies about in the email,
Yeah.
because she says she doesn't do this on social media. Well, and I went back and looked, and I can't see the comment anymore, but I
Yeah.
have screenshots of what she said.
Yeah.
Just so you know, if you require the proof, I have screenshots of what she said. And she's offering to now inadvertently research the very people. But in the same token, when confronted, she now suddenly decides she's no longer interested in it. And oh, by the way, I'm a social worker. We're trained to learn all about these things. Okay, you may be a trained social worker, but that doesn't mean you know jack about Amish culture.
No. And I'm sorry, but it doesn't, being a social worker, she said something like social workers are trained to work with anyone, even people very differently from them. Okay, maybe social workers receive a very basic training in school about working across difference, but social workers don't receive specialized training in every culture they might come across. It's actually, I mean, it's one of my whole big soapboxes about advocacy too, is that I argue for the kind of advocacy that you and I do, where we're like very specifically trained in certain populations. And so we can respond to, like, I can respond really well in specific institutional Christian contexts. You have like really intense expertise in Amish and plain contexts, when in general, advocacy and social work too are geographic.
May I just interject as well?
Yeah.
For all those people that are listening, I'm not just saying I'm an advocate or anything like that. Like for example, I actually have like trauma training that I've done. I have other types of training that I've done for like crisis. I have life coach training. And typically I don't even refer to myself as an advocate. I refer to myself as a researcher and a life coach. Thank you.
Yes. No, that very helpful. But I advocate for expertise over, geographic nearness. Like the closest advocate or support person to a survivor might not be the person who can help them the most.
Right.
And for Dr. Harder to say, I could help anyone. Well, no, you couldn't. And it's disingenuous to say that. And like you said, I think what I find really insidious about her is that she bends truth, right? She's that indirect kind of, like, you made some very direct statements, you said in the open letter, and you said again here. She legitimizes internal Amish and plain systems for responding to abuse. And those systems are everything from the conservative, what are they called? Crisis intervention teams,
Yes.
to those awful books, which I want to say
Here,
someone in someone in an article referred to it
this
as,
one, this one,
yes. Someone
this
in an
one.
article referred to that as like an old thing you had found. No, they still use that,
No,
right?
they're still selling
Yes.
this. You can
That is
still write
present.
Pathway Publishers and for $8 plus shipping and handling, get a set of these booklets. There's more. There's a whole set of them.
Yes. So like she recommends those books, which are super victim blaming, super awful. She recommends the crisis intervention teams. She recommends facilities that are unlicensed. Like she legitimizes all of those things. They're in the recommendations of our books. She talks about them in a training. I found the handout from one of her trainings online. And it goes point by point and it says, refer Amish people to internal systems. Um, and then in her letter to you, she uses this tricky language of like, I never told anyone to turn over everything to these systems. And I was like, well,
No, she legitimizes that.
right. Like,
By
well,
her
you really
taking
just
her
dodged the question.
credentials her
Yeah.
taking her credentials also, by the way, I work in a medical facility for my day job that pays the bills, right? So, like,
Yes.
I actually work for doctors, and I have friends that are social workers. So, like, they're horrified that
Yes.
there is a social work professor who is
Yes.
teaching social work students, and
Yes.
they promote this.
And by the
Horrified.
way,
And
all
not
of this,
only that, a professional at my job literally took these booklets and could not even get halfway through this one in a
yeah,
month and a half. It was so bad for them.
yeah, it's horrifying. Like these aren't like, oh, it's bad advice. They are rape culture. They are sexual abuse enabling, like they use sexually abuse enabling language, ideas, culture.
But, I know nothing because I don't have letters behind my name that mean anything to her. So, you know, I'm supposed to sit down. Like, I literally felt like she was doing the Amish ministries equivalent of like, you need to go sit down. You're
Yes.
just being a rabble rouser. You know
Yes.
nothing of that which you speak, okay? You're
Using
like
incredibly deceptive
like
language
yes,
and
and
condescending. First, she offers to study you, and it's like, no, this is a colleague that you need to learn from, not someone who should, like, before you can even think about interviewing plain and Amish survivors, you need to learn how from these people who are telling you you don't know how. Stop offering to study them. So, number one,
thank you.
stop putting yourself here when they are telling you we're the experts and you're like here, way down here.
All you see is exactly what they want you to see. I've been telling y'all this for a long time. I've been telling people this for a long, long time. You don't see what they don't want you to see. The other thing is I honestly felt like I was about to be brought up in church to confess on my knees. So there's that. I don't think I do so well on my knees. I'm getting a little older. It's not my
I have
favorite.
creaky joints as well. So,
It's not my favorite.
um, I think, and I don't know how many sort of liberal Mennonites you've dealt with, and I'll just classify as liberal Mennonites anyone who's not like plain or old order or conservative, right? So MCUSA, like there are more conservative MCA people and more liberal, but I would classify them all as comparatively liberal. So I don't know how many liberal Mennonites you've dealt with, but I feel like the difference, I feel like the general messaging, the vibes, the like control systems are extremely similar between my context and yours. But in your context, you all say the quiet part out loud, and like liberal Mennonites are like incredible at saying the same awful things, but like, with plausible deniability and like deceptively and in ways that they could later say like, no, 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 no. That's not it. Oh, that's, oh. That's not at all what I meant. I'm so sorry you took it that way, right? Like they're
I'm
just
so sorry. I'm sorry. Lo, stop, comma, pause. We have to. This is a big, big pet peeve of mine. I'm so sorry you took it that way.
yes.
That is not an apology. If
No.
somebody says that to you, that is abuser language.
Yes. Yes,
Thanks.
it is.
Thanks. Continue. Sorry.
No, exact and it's exactly that. It's that phrase I feel like represents the whole vibe, which is I'm sorry, not because I have anything to take accountability for, not be, I'm sorry that you're such a problem. Um, and then if you said, I don't, wow, you really made me feel like a problem. Oh no, that was not my intent at
Oh,
all.
no. I
No,
would
no.
never do that to you.
Right.
I'm here for you.
Yes.
I was trained to do all of these things, and I'm here for you. I'm
There was
so here
this,
for you.
my best example is, and this man it comes from my ex-Amish context. Irvin Stutzman was the executive director of MCUSA, and I co-founded with my brother a like movement for queer inclusion in the Mennonite Church, and I wrote a little op-ed that was, I don't know, I think it was the Beatitudes or something, like all the beautiful things that were present in my queer relationship. And
Uh-huh.
it was like, I love my partner. It was just going through a day with my partner and about how we supported each other. And I used all these little references to scripture. And at the very beginning of it, there was a typo in how I typed out the verses. Like I put a colon where there should have been a dash or something, whatever. It was a typo. So Irvin Stutzman responds to this opinion piece that I wrote about my queer relationship. And it was very vulnerable. Like, Mennonites don't love queer folks. And I was still deeply invested at the time in the context. And so I felt just really like exposed and vulnerable. And like I shared something really personal. And he wrote to me and said, that was a really interesting way to type the scripture reference. I've never seen it like that before. I'm not quite sure what you meant. I think you might have meant this. And I was just like
Oh, Lordy.
gutted because it was like, oh, okay. So the content, nothing in the content of this is worth, but you just need to imply that I'm bad at the Bible and I'm stupid at verses and I don't, but it's like, he, if I said that, of course he'd be like, oh, no,
Oh, no,
no.
I'm sorry you understood
I
that.
was
That is
just curious.
not.
I just hadn't seen that before. I just wanted you to know. And it's so insidious. Like, whereas I don't know in your experience if an Amish person would have just been like, you don't know the Bible, you're a girl and you're stupid.
I mean, believe it or not, um, well, that actually did happen. It wasn't quite like that.
Yeah. And
It
the
was
Mennonites
more
are like, interesting. You don't
no, it
know
was
anything.
more like, well, you know, I think you're reading the Bible too much.
Oh no, not too much.
Oh, yes, and here's a fun fact for you, right? So, you're reading the Bible too much was one response. Another thing is not only are you reading the Bible too much, well, the woman is the weaker vessel and they can't read and comprehend the Bible correctly.
You were just misunderstanding. You got too big for
Well,
your
I
britches.
just I just don't know. I just had too many questions, okay? I had too many questions, okay?
Submit yourself to the Lord, okay?
You just have to have faith in the leadership. The bishop knows the Bible and the ministry knows the Bible, and they
That's
were
right.
all appointed by God, and they would never, ever misuse the Bible.
Oh
You
no.
can't question them because, they were appointed by God and they are the vessel of God. And so they speak when they preach and when they speak, their words are the word of God.
Amen, Sister Mary.
Oh, Lord, Jay.
That's and the leather dyke behind me says amen.
Okay, then.
Excuse my language.
Um, why are you excusing your
I don't
language?
know. I suddenly was like, do I need to contextualize?
No, no, I'm pretty sure the listeners to this are all pretty much like some form of religious background, and so as such, most of them will get it,
Wonderful.
I
And
think.
I mean, that's the actually, if we want to talk about um, direct language and graphic language and, really direct concepts, you were saying that Dr. Harder, like, changes her messaging, right? And she would say, like, oh, you have to work with these systems and you have to meet people where they are. And all of this flowery language that's really hiding, saying, we can't talk directly to Amish and plain people about sex and sexualities, about bodies and autonomy, about who's touching who should be touching who has the right
Healthy
to touch whose
healthy
body,
touch, healthy touch,
healthy touch,
unhealthy touch, what is abusive, what is considered crimes, what are criminal
what
acts.
are
But
criminal
in
acts.
doing so but in doing so, she's actually dehumanizing them, in my
Yes,
opinion. And I say this because it is dehumanizing to be treated as an object in the zoo. That is how she talks about us.
yes,
That is how she, like, I have heard some of the things she says about us. She romanticizes us, and then, like,
yes.
very, very carefully, it's like she's looking at us like animals in the zoo. I'm
Sweet
telling you this,
little simple
Amish people
minded.
Amish people are human beings. They are complex human beings, the same as any other group of people out there. So if you think Amish people are stupid, you need to sit down. Sit down and be quiet and have a conversation with Amish people about things and actually get to know people
And
instead of going out and talking for them.
when you say like the simple and romantic thing is a brand too, so she's
Uh-huh.
like accepting this like Amish propaganda that like we're just sweet simple people who plow the fields and bake the pies. Like that's a tourism brand.
Uh-huh.
uh
And it gives her prestige and it elevates her. It
yes.
elevates her and she makes money off of it. She makes, oh my god, like she makes, I can't think about the money. Look, like I maybe I should have taken blood pressure meds before I did this.
Well, I don't know if you know
Woo!
this, but she's, well, you know this because we put out the report, but she's giving another training on like the 9th and 10th or something like that, after she said to you that she was not seeking them out anymore. And that's
Uh-huh.
another, like, that's the tricky language. And I don't mean to harp on these little details, but I think
No, but it's
it's the death
important.
by 1,000 paper cuts. Like, you very directly, well, first of all, she could have avoided all of this by when she was first approached by some Amish and Plain advocates. And they said, hey, we're concerned with your partnership with this man. She could have said, tell me more. Right? Like that.
What's she could have said what's going on? What's
Yes.
concerning to you? She could have had all these other responses, but you know what? We should maybe go talk to the deacon about it because I bet you they'll preach about it on Sunday in church.
And so
I'm
she
just saying.
chose this partnership over listening to survivors and advocates. And then when more people came together and said, hey, we're more concerned, hey, we're more concerned, and kept coming and saying, like, hey, we're raising the level of concern we're bringing to you because you're raising the level of damage you're doing. And her response, like, you made very direct asks. Please stop saying you're an expert. Please stop training people. Please stop partnering with these folks. Please stop writing about it. Please stop doing, speaking engagements and,
Yep.
uh, uh,
There was one other thing.
presentations,
Yep.
and just stop these partnerships. Just walk away from this work, please. You're doing damage. And instead of saying, yes, okay, she sort of said to you, oh, I'm not doing any of the things you're saying I am, while continuing to do
To
them.
do them, which is just
And
another
that's
lie.
so harmful and damaging. Like, when we talk about gaslighting, it can sometimes be hard to understand what gaslighting is. I feel like this is the clearest example. You said, please stop doing these things. And she said, oh, I'm not really, and I won't really be doing them. You're misunderstanding. And she is actively still doing them. She just gave a presentation yesterday, the day before. She's about to give another one in a week or whatever. She might pick back up her Amish research. She still has things in progress, and she hasn't apologized or rescinded any of her teachings, and said, "Hey, I got it wrong."
which
And
is
it's
also
never too late to do that. I think we're afraid that if we admit we did something wrong, that will undermine everything we did. I think if she would admit she did something wrong, I would see her as having so much integrity.
right. I would have so much more respect for her.
I'm sorry, I think I talked over something you wanted to say.
Oh, no, I was just saying, like, I would have so much more respect for her.
Yeah,
Like, to me, the more you gaslight, and here's another thing, like, I was talking about this earlier. What do we mean when we say isolation? So, here's an example of isolation is there were 20 people that signed that letter. I just happened to be the one that emailed it to her from the Misfit Amish's email.
right,
And when 20 people signed that letter and sent it to her, and she responds to one person,
right.
that is alienation and isolation.
Yes.
Above all, beyond all belief. It is terrible. And yeah,
Yeah. Well, and did she the gaslighting in religion is I'm sorry, I'm reading the comment. The gaslighting in religion is so horrendous. I thought it was normal. I don't tolerate that bullshit anymore. Yeah,
amen. Hell yeah, you're in the right place. Woo.
it is so normal. It's so normal. Like one of the things that we put at the very end of our report when we were, you know, trying to give people something they could do if they wanted to to take responsibility was we said like take a rest because when you're extricating yourself from a high control group, from religion, from these contexts that are like constant gaslighting, it's really hard to start to pick apart like what's reality, what was a message that I learned,
Mhm.
that's not real and doesn't have to apply to me anymore.
Yeah.
And it can take so I feel like I'm still doing it, you know. I
I've been out for 18 years and I'm still picking apart some messages.
right,
Seriously. Like like okay, so this is a good one that I always think is funny. Okay.
I'm
So
ready.
I frequently conduct trainings in my, job that pays the bills, keeps
Yeah.
a roof over my head. Oh, and gives me coffee, guys. This is how I
That's
afford my
important.
coffee is
Mhm.
coffee is important. It is very, very important, and sometimes it buys me wine too. But I frequently, like, may conduct trainings, and what'll happen, like, one day, a couple years ago, I literally realized that I'm conducting a training, and as soon as a man speaks, I wait. I wait for the man to say everything, and then I wait for a man to respond. Why do you think that is?
Oof, that's patriarchal cult stuff right there. The authorities have to speak, right?
Yes, because the authorities have to speak. So I've consciously worked to not conduct myself in that manner because, like, when I'm teaching or training, I'm actually doing something that I've had specialized training in that they don't know the way that I know. Like, I'm
Yes.
considered the expert, the subject matter expert in that subject. So it's okay, it's fine and dandy for them to ask me questions, and I'm allowed to answer those questions.
Right. Yeah. But that stuff is encoded like so deeply. The one I'm working on right now is um I have and it could be in work, in a friendship, in a relationship, in a group I volunteer with, and in anything. I stay in situations that are just not good for me. Like it doesn't have to be violent or abusive or whatever. It can just be like not the right fit for me
Mhm.
for like until I have tried every single thing to make it work. Um, and I think that's like from the deep messaging that the reason, Mennonite culture wasn't working for me because something was wrong with me. And if I just fixed one more thing, they'd love me and I belong. And if I just fixed one more thing, they'd love me and I belong. And you know what? Now that you fix that, if you just fixed one more thing. And so, I just spent my whole childhood, and I know not everyone loves Brene Brown, but she calls it hustling for worthiness. And I feel like that really, like that phrase just sits with me. Like I hustle for worthiness. I always like posit, you
Mm-hmm.
know, that I'm the one who's doing something wrong. And if I try harder, the thing will work and be better. And it's so hard. It's every time I leave a little bit sooner and I recognize it a little bit more, but it's so hard for me to leave any context if I haven't tried every single thing or if they haven't done something horrendous to me. Like if it's just okay, but there could be something more joyful and better for me out there, I, I stay until,
So, Jay, have
yeah.
you ever met people who, maybe they weren't exactly your kind of vibe and you kind of felt like obligated to hang out with them?
Oh, yeah.
And when they ask you, you're unable to say no?
Yeah.
Oh, darn. Darn.
Why?
I shouldn't be asking those questions. Well, I am asking that because I think that uh, sometimes when we've spent so much of our time learning to be worthy, when we were taught that love isn't necessarily acceptance and respect and kindness and compassion, like empathy, we weren't necessarily, even if the
Yeah.
words may have been given to us that love is all of these things, we were
Right.
not necessarily shown that. So when
No.
we were shown that love is shunning people and love is excommunicating people
Oof.
and love is
Yeah.
admonishing people and love is picking people apart and having moving goalposts. Ooh.
Yeah.
So sometimes I think that what happens there is that we end up having to spend a significant amount of time trying to figure out that we really are worthy of being around people that don't crush our spirit. And some
Yeah.
people just aren't for each other, and that's
Right.
okay.
Right.
It's absolutely okay. Like I've met people who like there's just something off and I'm just like, "Nope, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. Bye." Like it was great meeting you, but bye. But then there's people that I meet and I'm just like, "Oh my god, I love your energy. I love the way we interact." Like, I'm autistic, I'm a little bit weird, I'm a little bit socially awkward. Like those are, I don't know. I always feel like the Misfit Amish is kind of like a collective group of like the misfits, the people who don't quite fit in.
Yes.
And a lot of us strive to really build connections that work for us and for the people that we're connecting with. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. Yes. Yes.
So we've got a few more minutes left, but let's read this comment. So
Yeah.
somebody says picking apart the messages just was taught in my very conservative Baptist church. I have a great therapist who is helping me process this crap. Good for you. I mean,
Yes.
honestly,
I
here's
have a great
another thing.
therapist too.
I have a great therapist too. I mean, and I've had many different therapists. I've had some not so great therapists.
Yeah, me too.
Have you ever had the therapist who kind of like wanted to delve deep into your trauma as
Oh my
if you
God,
were
yes.
like an animal in the zoo?
Yeah, I'm gonna tell Seymour. I'm telling a funny story. I need you to chill. Come here, babe. Um, I
Oh, they're sounding stern. Time
I
to
was like,
chill.
Seymour, this is
Ooh.
funny. My maybe like worst one was, how like well, I don't know if this happens to you, but I know that I sort of swing back and forth between like, really barely anything happened to me and I'm fine. And like, I'm the most traumatized person in the world who like the most awful things have happened or whatever. So I go to a first session with a therapist, and you have to be like, all right, so I've been through this and this and this and this, and here's my stuff, and here's about where I am, and here are the things I've done. So I tell her, like the kinds of violence I've experienced, you know, I tell her my little history, and she just like had a little clipboard and was taking notes, and her eyes were like so big. She was like, and just looked really like, oh my gosh, this is the craziest. All I could think sitting there was like, do you only have like celebrity clients whose problems are like, my money is really stressing me
She
out?
got she got people with first world problems. I don't think the violence I experienced is a first world problem. Um,
Right.
dude, like I think like the craziest therapist experience. I don't know which one is the craziest, but one of the craziest ones I would say is legitimately the one who I wore a sleeveless shirt to go to the initial consult.
Uh-oh.
And
What that means.
well, so what many people don't realize and don't know is that, primarily all throughout my body, I have lots of scars from being abused.
Yeah.
Okay. So um, I go to this therapist and I'm wearing this sleeveless shirt. And at the end of it, she says, well, I'm not going to be able to see you unless you admit to self harming.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm here to tell you, like, y'all, like, seriously, 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 none of those scars were from self harming. My
Well,
self harming came from a different form. That is not how I tried to. Anyways,
yes.
whatever, whatever. But that was one of the most traumatizing experiences, and it took me a long time
Yeah.
to like get back the 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 ability to even say, okay, I'm ready to go back to therapy
Yeah.
because yeah. So
Yeah. You don't tell someone what their experience in reality is. When you're a therapist, maybe she went to Dr. Harder's school of
oh Lord. Well, and then the other one is like people who like treat me like they think I made it all up.
oh my God.
And I'm just
What,
like,
just because it's too horrifying for people to believe? Like, welcome to the world that we see every single day.
you don't know what I see when I close my eyes. You don't know what it's like. You don't know. You don't know what I see when I'm asleep. You don't
Mhm.
know. You have no idea. So don't sit here like what you're doing there is no. Just no. So it's important like for anybody who wants a therapist, who wants to go to therapy is find a therapist that you feel like you can process trauma with.
Yeah.
That's what you need.
And don't be put off by our stories. We were telling our worst stories. I have a great therapist now.
Oh, I have an amazing therapist. So nowadays, I actually made a video about how I find a therapist. And one of the things that I do is I interview my therapist. You can go find that video on the YouTube channel or the
Love that.
audio, whatever. But one of the things that like is so great about my therapist now is so I walk in and I have a list of like 5 questions that are really important to me because I'm like, first off, like if you're just going to sit there and tell me to pray about it, we're not going to be able to work together.
No. Yeah.
Um, if you're a praying person, even your therapist should still not be telling you to pray just to pray about it as a solution.
Oh gosh. No.
Like, just sure you can pray about it if
Yes.
that brings you comfort, but your therapist is not in a position to tell you to pray about it. They need to be helping you find other ways also to navigate the trauma to be able to live your life to the fullest extent. Whew.
I think one of the biggest disservices that we do sort of nationally regarding mental health and religion is seeing Christianity as neutral and like as not automatically affecting mental health. Like, I'm not saying, I'm not here to say all Christianity is bad, all Christianity is
Mhm.
destructive to mental health, but I am here to say that there is a spectrum that goes from like full high control group that is like really toxic and abusive and violent, all the way to, with some stops in between of like pretty toxic and violent, pretty shamey, pretty, into more neutral ground. And
Mhm.
for me, or for I think anyone who has been who's been okay, I'm just gonna be frank, who's been mind fucked by religion, right? For whom like religion has embedded some deep shame, embedded the idea of original sin, embedded the idea of a sexuality that is bad and wrong, has any purity culture, has any of those things um, need to be examined in therapy. Like we need to see them as damaging to mental health. And
I
so
think your
that
pup agrees.
yeah, Seymour is passionate about Christianity, some forms of Christianity being bad for mental.
They've got a lot of words to say.
Yeah, Seymour's like, no one should have to be told to pray in therapy, especially if Christianity damaged you.
Yes. 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 That's exactly what your pup's saying. So it can be one of our commenters. It can be difficult to recognize a bad therapist when you find one. I kept thinking, but this person is a professional. They know better than I do. Yeah, we're not taught to question authority, are we? And then they said, I think it's the appeal to authority mindset and gaslighting that contributes to it. Well, is it really, think about it. Sometimes you have like people who are there are people who are literally thinking that, the only reason that a father would rape his children is legitimately because his wife didn't have enough sex with him. And there are therapists, believe it or not, so-called counselors, who maybe prescribe to that at times. So it feels familiar for them to have that kind of therapist sometimes. Ooh.
Yep, my first, well, when I was in college and my my Mennonite college, now that I say that out loud, I hear it. My Mennonite college referred me to a therapist, and Seymour is
Oh,
very
Lord.
angry about it. That therapist. I
Maybe
mean,
he
like,
needs to be
something
on
she said.
camera.
He has some big feeling. Are you having big feelings? Come here, baby. Yeah. Um, that therapist told me like some really specific in our first or second session, some really specific things about, well, men are like this and women are like this. And, it's just that like I've never really met a young man who was like this or a woman who was like this. And I just remember sitting there and thinking, like, what is happening in this thing, right? Like, and I just said, I don't think so. Like, it wasn't. Seymour, come here, bro. Seymour's mad about it. I was still deeply involved in the Mennonite church, and I was still, but I just some of that stuff never stuck with, like, never sunk in with me, which is why I didn't fit in right. Uh, but I just was like, no, I don't. I don't think you're right there. But yeah, some therapists really hold those same like harmful beliefs, and we can find other therapists if that's.
Yes. 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 And I know there's like secular therapy out there. because also one of our listeners is talking about people telling them to pray is so triggering. Yes, it can be very triggering for many people, even if they are Christians, even if they
Mhm.
are believers, if they have had religion used as a tool, as a weapon against them, it can be very triggering for them. Absolutely. I also don't think people should pray for people without consent. Okay. Okay. I said what I said.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And I think to me, the prayer solution is the same as like go outside in the sunshine or like try to feel happy. It's like, listen, if those things worked, I would be cured. Okay. I've
Uh-huh.
gone, I've prayed, I've gone in the
Have
sunshine,
more faith.
and
Have more faith.
I can't
Oh,
get enough.
I'm going to send you thoughts and prayers. You know what? Thoughts and prayers didn't do, never mind.
Right.
I'm not going to go on that. Um,
We tried thoughts and prayers for long enough. We're trying new things now.
yes, yes, it's time to try new things. That's what it's really time to do. Um, I was going to ask you if you had any parting thoughts for listeners.
I mean,
Do our listeners have parting thoughts for us?
I I think my biggest parting thought is just the same like direct people are safe people. We're not used to it in our culture. It can feel jarring at first. I think I was just born direct, and it's part of why I never quite feel like I fit in because it's not valued in our culture very much. And it certainly wasn't valued in Mennonite cultures. But direct people are safe people because you can trust them to tell you the truth. And if you feel uneasy with folks, if you feel like their words aren't matching their behaviors or their uh
Actions
yes, then you can ask for clarity, and if you still feel that same way, like they might not be a safe person
for you.
for you. Yeah.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's really important that you know, Jay, that you are worthy of acceptance and belonging and connection, whether or not you
Dang
like
it.
do all of those works. Like, I just got to tell you, like, whether or not you do all of those things, you're still worthy of connection and empathy and love and compassion. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
So are you. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
No, I always need to hear it. I feel like there was so much of the opposite messaging in childhood that it's like I can't hear that enough because
Mhm. And it means a lot when you feel connected to people too, because, like, we've had so many adverse experiences. And so I'd like to remind our viewers and listeners. Oh, wait, hold it. My parting thought is I'm thankful to have found people who understand and don't expect me to explain myself. Oh, good. That is beautiful and amazing. Thank you. Um, I think my parting thought is like, honestly, like, you, if you're listening to this and you may feel like you're alone, but the thing is you're really not alone. There are people out there who will be happy to treat you with compassion and empathy and love and consideration and kindness. And you deserve that. You're worthy. Hope everybody has a beautiful night, and I'll see y'all later.